dock was never meant to collapse. It had passed inspections. It had signatures. It had approvals. But when the Navy SEAL stepped forward that night, the ground failed him anyway. No gunshot, no warning, just steel giving way to black water. What saved him wasn't training, it wasn't orders. It was a dog that refused to move and pulled him back half a second before he vanished. Later, they would discover the truth. Someone had planned for silence. They thought water and time would erase everything. They were wrong, because some miracles don't come from heaven and fire. They come quietly, on four paws. Astoria sat under a low sky, rain drifting steadily over the old port where the Columbia River pressed against concrete docks and rusted steel. The harbor looked calm in the way places did when they had learned how to hide what passed through them. Cole Mercer arrived without announcement. He was a Navy SEAL in his early 40s, tall, solidly built, with the controlled movements of a man who wasted nothing, not time, not words. His black uniform was practical rather than symbolic, his weapon carried as naturally as his breath. Cole had been assigned quietly, not for patrol and not for show, but to evaluate the security of a sensitive military supply route that moved through this port. On paper, it was a routine assessment. In reality, it was a precaution taken by people who no longer trusted the numbers they were seeing. At Cole's side moved Rook, a 7-year-old German shepherd trained for operational work. The dog was large, dark-coated, and powerfully built, his harness worn smooth by years of use. Rook's eyes were alert but calm, his ears constantly adjusting to wind, rain, and distant mechanical sounds. He did not pull at the lead or scan wildly. He worked with patience, reading the environment the way Cole read terrain and angles. They moved through the older section of the port, where abandoned warehouses lined the water like forgotten teeth. Concrete walls were streaked black by decades of rain, metal doors sealed and left untouched as shipping routes shifted elsewhere. The air smelled of salt, oil, and age. Everything appeared neglected enough to be unimportant. Cole checked access points, locks, and sightlines with quiet efficiency. He noted what cameras covered and, more importantly, what they did not. Rook ranged slightly ahead, nose low, pace even, tracking layers of old scent without interest. Most of it was dead history. Then Rook stopped. It was not sudden. His pace simply slowed, then ceased, his body settling into a stillness that drew Cole's attention immediately. Rook's ears angled forward, tail low and unmoving. He stared at a warehouse that looked no different from the others. A wide metal door sealed with a heavy chain, a faded warning sign bolted to cracked concrete. No lights, no tracks, no signs of recent use. Cole halted beside him and followed the dog's line of sight. He did not speak. He watched Rook instead. The dog did not display a trained alert or a command posture. This was something else. His focus was narrow, intent, and sustained. Rain slid down the warehouse door in thin lines. The river moved behind them, steady and indifferent. The port remained quiet. Rook took one careful step closer to the sealed entrance and froze again, nostrils flaring slightly as he drew in air from beneath the door. His posture did not signal danger. It signaled recognition. Cole felt the shift settle into his awareness. He had been sent here because something did not belong, because a route that should have been predictable had grown careful. Now, standing in front of a forgotten warehouse with a dog who refused to move on, he understood that whatever was wrong with this port had learned how to stay hidden. The water beside them kept its secrets well. But Rook had found something that did not want to stay buried. Cole did not touch the door. He did not reach for the chain, the lock, or the radio at his shoulder. He stayed exactly where he was and looked down at Rook, because after years of working together, he had learned that moments like this were not solved with speed. They were solved with attention. Rook stood motionless beside the sealed warehouse, rain darkening the coarse fur along his back, his body aligned toward the metal door with a stillness that felt deliberate. His eyes were not wide or frantic. They were calm, fixed, and deeply certain. Cole knew the difference. This was not a trained alert, not a response reinforced by repetition or reward. This was something older, something that existed before commands and handlers. Rook was not asking what to do. He was refusing to move on. The rain softened the world around them. It slid down the metal door in narrow streams, pattered against the concrete, and blurred the edges of the dock lights behind them. The Columbia River moved steadily at their backs, water folding over itself without concern for what rested on shore. Cole lowered himself slowly, boots pressing into the wet concrete, and tilted his head toward the base of the door. He listened past the obvious sounds, past the water and the wind, the way he had learned to do in places where silence was never truly silent. At first there was nothing, just the dull echo of rain and the distant groan of the harbor settling into itself. Cole waited, holding still, letting time stretch. Then it came again. A faint, uneven sound, barely more than a vibration. A knock, dull and weak, rising from beneath the concrete floor as if the building itself were breathing. It stopped almost as soon as it began, leaving behind a silence that felt heavier for having been interrupted. Rook's ears snapped forward. His posture did not change, but his focus narrowed, every muscle in his body tightening with quiet restraint. He took one slow step toward the door and stopped, nose angled toward the thin seam at the base where air slipped through. He did not scratch. He did not bark. He simply stood there, absorbing the truth of the sound. Cole felt his chest tighten, not with fear but with recognition. He had heard many things in his career, machinery failing, buildings shifting, wind forcing its way into cracks. This was none of those. This sound carried intention, effort, and exhaustion. Cole leaned closer, pressing his gloved hand flat against the cold metal. The steel offered nothing back, only damp chill and age. He held his breath and listened again. Seconds passed. Then, softer than before, the sound returned. Another knock, slower, weaker, as if whoever made it had to decide whether it was worth the energy. Cole felt certainty settle without drama or doubt. Someone was alive beneath the concrete of the port warehouse, hidden in a place no one was meant to search. Rook shifted his weight, placing himself closer to the door, his body now forming a quiet barrier. His tail remained low and still. His breathing was controlled, measured. This was not the posture of a dog anticipating action. It was the posture of a guardian. Cole had seen it before in disaster zones, in collapsed structures where survivors lay trapped and time was the enemy. Rook did not understand plans or jurisdictions. He understood presence. If someone was there, he stayed. Cole straightened slowly, eyes never leaving the sealed entrance. He scanned the surrounding docks with a practiced sweep, noting the absence of movement, the way the rain erased distance and sound. The port felt abandoned in the way places often did when everyone assumed nothing of value remained. He listened for voices, engines, footsteps. There were none. Whoever had chosen this location had done so carefully, trusting neglect and weather to finish what they started. He crouched again and spoke softly, not raising his voice, not shaping the words as an order. He aimed them at the space beneath the door, keeping his tone even, steady, human. "If you can hear me," he said, "knock once." The pause that followed stretched long enough to make him question whether the sound he had heard before was fading memory rather than fact. Rook did not move. Then came the reply. One knock. Faint, deliberate, almost apologetic in its weakness. Cole exhaled slowly through his nose. That was enough? Rook let out a quiet breath, a sound closer to relief than alarm, and settled even more firmly in place. He did not look back at Cole. His attention belonged to the door and whatever lay beyond it. Cole watched the dog for a moment longer, letting the reality of the situation settle. This was no accident. No one ended up beneath reinforced concrete in a sealed warehouse by chance. This was containment. This was waiting. Someone had been left here with the expectation that time, cold, and silence would do the rest. Cole lowered his head again, listening for anything more. The sound did not return. He imagined the person beneath the floor, conserving strength, measuring breath, choosing stillness over panic. He had known soldiers who survived that way, who understood that survival sometimes meant becoming smaller, quieter, less noticeable. Whoever was down there had already made that calculation. Rook remained unmoving, rain tracing thin lines down his muzzle. His eyes never left the door. Cole felt a flicker of something he rarely allowed himself to name. Respect, not just for the dog beside him, but for the unseen person who had endured long enough to answer back. Cole rose to his feet again, posture controlled, and placed himself slightly in front of Rook, not to block him, but to acknowledge the shared line they were holding. He did not touch the door. Not yet. This moment mattered. It was the moment when discovery became responsibility. The river continued to move behind them, indifferent and constant. The rain fell on, patient as gravity. Cole stood there with a working dog who refused to leave and the knowledge that someone was still alive in a place designed to erase them. Whatever came next would require action, coordination, and care. But this moment belonged to stillness, to listening, to the quiet refusal to pretend nothing had been found. Rook shifted slightly, adjusting his stance, and planted his paws more firmly against the concrete. He would not be pulled away. He would not be redirected. Cole understood then that even if he had turned back, even if orders had changed, Rook would have remained. The dog had chosen this place, this moment, this unseen life. Cole looked once more at the sealed warehouse door, rain streaking its surface, chain hanging heavy and forgotten. He felt no urgency to move, only a growing certainty that whatever had been hidden here had misjudged one thing. It had counted on everyone passing by. It had not counted on a dog who knew when to stop. The knocking did not come again, but it no longer needed to. The silence itself had become proof. Cole moved carefully once the certainty settled. He eased the warehouse door open just enough to slip inside, guiding his light across the damp concrete floor. The space smelled old and enclosed, oil and moisture trapped together for years. Rook remained at the threshold, angled toward the opening in the slab, his body forming a quiet guard. He was no longer searching. He was holding ground. Cole slid the steel plate aside inch by inch. Cold air breathed up from below, carrying with it the unmistakable scent of a human presence that had been forced to wait. A ladder descended into darkness. Cole tested the rungs, then spoke softly, keeping his voice steady and close. "I'm here. I'm coming down." The reply rose from below after a pause, thin but controlled. "I hear you." Cole descended slowly. The chamber beneath the warehouse was smaller than expected, a technical maintenance space built into the port decades earlier when redundancy was considered a virtue. Concrete walls were streaked with moisture. A narrow ventilation shaft pulled a weak but steady draft from above. Against the far wall sat a woman, knees drawn in, hands resting loosely together as if to keep them from shaking. Hannah Pierce looked to be in her mid-30s, slender and compact, with the lean strength of someone used to long hours on job sites rather than offices. Her dark hair was pulled back into a tight knot that had loosened with time, strands clinging to her damp forehead. Her face was pale, but her eyes were sharp and focused, tracking Cole's movement without fear. She wore a weathered work jacket over thermal layers, heavy-duty pants scuffed at the knees, and steel-toed boots laced tight. Everything about her spoke of preparation, not panic. Cole stopped a few steps away and angled the light down. "I'm Cole," he said. "You're not alone anymore." Hannah nodded once. "Hannah Pierce," she said. Her voice was hoarse, shaped by restraint. "Civil engineer." Rook's head appeared briefly at the opening above, ears forward, eyes intent. Hannah looked up, and something in her expression softened despite her exhaustion. "He stopped," she said quietly. "I heard him." "He doesn't walk past things like this," Cole replied. Hannah shifted carefully, testing her legs. Cole noticed how deliberate the movement was, how she rationed effort. Around her, the chamber bore signs of quiet survival. The vent grate had been removed and set aside. A strip of cloth wrapped a sharp concrete edge. An empty water bottle lay neatly capped near her boot. She had planned, adjusted, endured. "How long?" Cole asked. "Long enough," Hannah said. "I stopped counting after I realized counting wasted energy." Cole nodded. "You did what you had to." "I did what the structure allowed," she said. "That's the difference." Cole studied the chamber again, seeing it now through her words. "Why were you brought here?" Hannah did not hesitate. "Because I noticed something that didn't belong." She explained without emotion, as if reciting measurements from memory. She had been contracted to review port infrastructure tied to a sensitive military logistics upgrade, load-bearing changes, reinforcement routes, ventilation modifications. On paper, the changes looked routine. In reality, they were designed to hide movement, not support weight. Access corridors that bypassed cameras, chambers sealed but left active on internal plans. She filed concerns. The responses came quickly and thinly. Then she was asked to inspect one last site in person to reconcile discrepancies. "They told me it was temporary," Hannah said. "A procedural hold." Then the door closed. The chain went on. The explanation ended. Cole felt the shape of it settle. They didn't want a report. "They didn't want a record," Hannah corrected. "A death would have created one." Rook let out a low, restrained sound above them, as if in agreement. Cole moved to the ladder and secured a rope, anchoring it with care. "Can you climb?" Hannah tested her legs again, breathing through the effort. "Slow," she said. "But yes." Cole positioned himself to brace her ascent. She climbed carefully, pausing when dizziness threatened, conserving strength the way she always had. Rook stepped back to give space, eyes never leaving her. When Hannah reached the top, she sat on the concrete floor, rain misting her face as she drew in the open air with visible relief. She did not cry. She did not collapse. She simply closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them again. "They'll call this a mistake," she said quietly, before Cole could speak. "A technical error. They'll say I accessed a restricted space." Cole met her gaze. "Not if it's documented correctly." Hannah studied him, searching for something beneath the words. "I don't need protection," she said. "I need accuracy. If this becomes paperwork designed to close itself, it disappears." Rook moved closer and sat beside her, his shoulder near her knee without touching. Hannah rested her hand lightly against his fur, fingers unsteady now that the waiting was over. "Thank you," she said to him, not as gratitude, but recognition. Cole looked around the warehouse, at the ladder, the sealed door, the deliberate concealment. No sirens yet, no flashing lights, just rain and a port that believed it had finished its work. "We'll move carefully," Cole said. "Nothing loud. Not yet." Hannah nodded. "Good," she said. "They're counting on noise or silence, not precision." Rook remained seated, watchful, as Cole covered the opening and restored the steel plate loosely, enough to hide the chamber without sealing it again. The warehouse returned to stillness, but it was a different kind now. The secret was no longer buried. It was waiting. Outside, the port lights hummed, and the river slid past in the dark. Somewhere beyond the docks, systems were already adjusting, erasing, smoothing edges. Cole felt it as clearly as if he could see the code moving. Hannah drew her jacket tighter and looked toward the water. "Whatever they're moving through here," she said, "it doesn't want witnesses." Cole followed her gaze. "Then we won't let it stay invisible." Rook stayed exactly where he was, ears forward, holding the space between what had been hidden and what was about to be recorded. Cole stepped a few paces away from Hannah and raised his secure device, turning his back slightly to shield the screen. He did not waste time reconstructing the scene or revisiting what they already knew. What mattered now was confirmation. He opened an internal channel used only for quiet verification and keyed in a single name: Hannah Pierce. The system returned nothing. Cole narrowed the parameters and searched again, this time through contractor registries tied to port infrastructure, then through archived access credentials that should have persisted even after termination. The result did not change. No contracts, no historical permissions, no audit trail. Even the vendor ID that should have lingered like residue had been wiped clean. He opened a second channel and initiated a voice call. The connection clicked once, then steadied. "You're early," the voice on the other end said. Daniel Reeves never bothered with greetings. He was a systems analyst assigned to logistics oversight, late 30s, thin-framed, shoulders slightly hunched from years at desks built for other people. His mind moved faster than his speech, and his tone carried the permanent fatigue of someone who knew exactly how fragile order really was. "I need you to check a name," Cole said. "Civilian, infrastructure engineer, Hannah Pierce." There was a pause, the faint sound of keys. "That's not coming up," Daniel said. "Try archived mirrors," Cole replied. "Vendor-side backups." Another pause, longer this time. "Still nothing," Daniel said. "That's not normal." Cole leaned his weight onto his heel. "Define not normal." Daniel exhaled through his nose. "When someone leaves a project, they leave debris, invoices, access pings, revisions attached to other names. This is clean. Too clean." Cole glanced back at Hannah. She was sitting upright now, posture controlled, listening without appearing to. "Could this be delayed sync?" Cole asked. "No," Daniel said. "This was intentional removal. Someone with the right permissions executed it across layers. Primary system, secondary mirror, vendor cache. Whoever did it knew where redundancy lived and killed it first." "So she wasn't erased by accident," Cole said. Daniel's voice lowered slightly. "No, she was erased by design." Cole ended the call without comment and turned back toward Hannah. He did not soften the words. "Your records are gone," he said. "All of them?" Hannah nodded, as if confirming a calculation she had already run. "Then it wasn't supposed to end quickly," she said. "A death creates paperwork, autopsies, jurisdiction fights. This way, they get a report that closes itself." "They were planning an accident," Cole said. "Yes," Hannah replied. "A technical one, misuse of a restricted space, operator error, something no one wants to argue with because it sounds dull." Rook stood and moved without command, nose low, attention sharpening. The dog's work had shifted again. He was no longer focused on Hannah or the warehouse opening. He was tracking what had been done around them since she had been sealed inside. Rook stopped near the warehouse wall and pressed his nose along the concrete seam where metal met ground. He sneezed once, sharp and irritated, then moved on. Cole followed, reading the dog's posture. This was not an old trail. Rain should have erased it. The fact that it hadn't meant it was recent. They reached a narrow passage where stacked shipping containers pressed close to the structure. The containers were generic, their markings intentionally forgettable. Rook traced the base of the stack, then paused, ears forward, tail low. Cole crouched and caught the scent immediately. Solvent. Industrial grade. Not fuel, not oil. Cleaning agent used to strip trace material, not maintain equipment. Hannah watched them closely. They don't clean rooms, she said. They clean movement. Rook continued, following the scent line away from the containers toward a service corridor cut between structures. He stopped again near a maintenance access door set low into the concrete. The surface of the door was cleaner than the surrounding wall, wiped down thoroughly enough to stand out to anyone who knew what neglect usually looked like. Cole examined the handle. No prints, no grease, recently stripped. "This is how they move," Hannah said. "Inside routine." Rook moved on again, leading them toward a shallow drainage channel where runoff disappeared toward the river. The chemical scent was strongest here, sharp enough to override the damp air. Cole dipped 2 fingers into the thin stream and rubbed them together. The solvent lingered on his skin. "They wash the end of the root," Cole said. "So nothing points backward," Hannah replied. "Only forward into water." Cole straightened and took in the path Rook had drawn, without words. Warehouse, containers, maintenance access, drainage. A closed loop designed to move people and materials without drawing attention, then erase itself using procedure and weather. "They expected no one to look," Cole said. "They expected everyone to trust the process," Hannah replied. Rook returned and sat beside Hannah, his shoulder close to her knee without touching. The dog's posture was calm now, work completed for the moment. Hannah rested her hand lightly against his fur, not as comfort, but as acknowledgement. Cole looked down at her. "You understand why they did this better than most people would." "I designed systems," Hannah said. "I know how people hide inside them." Cole raised his device again and reopened the secure channel. He began assembling a preliminary internal report, not the kind meant to trigger action, but the kind meant to survive deletion. He logged the absence of Hannah's records, the cross-layer removal, the solvent traces, the movement routes. He attached timestamps and coordinates. He used neutral language, the kind that made lies harder to insert later. As he worked, a message notification blinked. "Daniel Reeves again. Someone just probed the mirror you touched. Shallow. Non-committal. They're checking if anyone noticed." Cole typed back, "Log it? Don't block yet." "Understood," Daniel replied. "They're careful." Cole locked the device and looked back at Hannah. "You were meant to disappear without noise," he said. "They assumed silence would finish the job." Hannah met his gaze. "Silence only works if no one listens." Rook shifted his weight and looked toward the service road, ears forward. The port remained outwardly unchanged, but Cole understood now that what mattered had already moved on. The danger wasn't here anymore. It was upstream, embedded in approvals and signatures, waiting to be challenged by someone willing to be exact. "No grave?" Cole said quietly. Hannah nodded once. "That's how they prefer it." Hannah sat with her back against the warehouse wall, knees drawn in, hands folded loosely in her lap. The effort of standing had taken more from her than she wanted to admit, and now that the urgency had eased, exhaustion pressed in without mercy. Still, her posture remained composed. She did not slump or close her eyes. She stayed present, listening, measuring, waiting. Cole crouched a few steps away, not looming, not retreating. He had seen many kinds of survivors, those who clung, those who broke, those who tried to bargain their way back into safety. Hannah was none of those. She watched him with the calm focus of someone who understood that rescue was a process, not a moment. "You don't need to stay here," Cole said. "We can move you somewhere warmer." Hannah shook her head slightly. "Not yet," she said. Her voice was quiet, steady despite the strain. "If we move too fast, this becomes about my condition, not about why I was here." Cole studied her face. The pallor was worse now, the fine tremor in her fingers harder to hide, but her eyes were clear. He waited. "I'm not asking you to save me," Hannah continued. "You already did what mattered. I'm asking you not to let this turn into a correction." "A correction?" Cole repeated. "Yes," she said. "A line item, an internal note, something that gets adjusted and disappears because it's easier than admitting intent." Cole felt the words settle uncomfortably close to things he had spent years avoiding. He had built his career on discipline, on believing that if rules were followed precisely enough, outcomes would justify themselves. He had seen what happened when emotion entered reports. He had also seen what happened when it didn't. "They'll say it was an error," Hannah said. "They'll say I accessed a restricted space. They'll say procedures worked because I was found." That version closes cleanly. "And the truth?" Cole asked. "The truth leaves edges," Hannah replied. "Edges people trip over." Rook moved closer and lay down near Hannah's side, his body positioned so that she could lean against him if she chose. He did not look at her. He faced outward, attention fixed on the open space beyond the warehouse door. His presence was quiet, deliberate. Hannah glanced at him and exhaled slowly, the first sign of relief she had allowed herself. Cole stood and stepped away, putting a few paces between them. He raised his secure device again, thumb hovering over the interface. He knew exactly which channel she meant, the one that did not trigger alarms, the one that preserved facts without advertising them, the one meant for officers who understood that not every truth survived daylight, but some could survive custody. He opened a draft and began assembling it in his head before touching the screen. Discovery without attribution. Erased records confirmed across layers. Evidence of solvent use consistent with trace removal. Structural concealment inconsistent with stated port function. Civilian engineer confined without due process. He stopped before entering the last line. Intent. That word carried weight. That word changed trajectories. Behind him, Hannah spoke again, softer now. "I don't want protection," she said. "I want fidelity. If this is handled correctly, it won't need me to speak loudly. It will speak on its own." Cole turned back toward her. "You understand what you're asking?" "Yes," Hannah said. "I also understand what happens if you don't." The honesty of it left no room for argument. Cole nodded once, the decision settling into place not as defiance, but alignment. He began typing. Rook rose and paced a short perimeter while Cole worked, nose low, confirming that nothing had changed. The chemical traces were thinning. The roots were quiet. Whoever had built this system had already moved on, trusting process to finish the work. Cole did not rush. Precision mattered more than speed now. As he typed, a message indicator blinked. He opened it without breaking rhythm. "Daniel Reeves, closed channel standing by." Cole replied with a single line. "Submitting preliminary. Monitor mirrors. Log access only." Acknowledged, Daniel sent back. No blocks unless directed. Cole continued. He did not write prose. He wrote structure. He included timestamps and coordinates. He referenced absence as evidence, not oversight. He quoted Hannah's statements exactly, without interpretation. He avoided adjectives. He avoided conclusions that could be dismissed as opinion. When he finished, he read it once, then once more, searching for any place where convenience had crept in. Satisfied, he routed the report through the internal channel reserved for ethical containment. The confirmation returned moments later, understated and final. He locked the device and turned back. Hannah watched him closely. "You sent it," she said. "Yes," Cole replied. "Not loudly," she said. "No," he agreed, "but accurately." She nodded, a small movement that cost her visible effort. "That's enough," she said. Cole moved back to her side and crouched again. "We'll move you now," he said. Slow. She accepted his arm without pride or hesitation, leaning just enough to rise. Rook adjusted instantly, shifting position so that she could steady herself against his shoulder. They moved together, measured and quiet, three figures bound by timing rather than sentiment. As they reached the edge of the warehouse, Hannah paused. She looked back once, not at the place where she had been held, but at Cole. "They think truth needs rescuing," she said, "that it begs. It doesn't. It waits." Cole met her gaze. "And someone listens." "Yes," she said, "that's the risk they didn't account for." Rook stood still beside them, ears forward, posture calm. He had done his work. The rest would take time. Cole guided Hannah to a safer spot just beyond the structure, keeping movements minimal, conserving her strength. He stayed with her, not as a guard, but as a witness. Discipline had brought him here. Tonight it did not conflict with conscience. It had made room for it. The report now existed in a place that could not be easily erased. Pressure would follow. Questions would be framed carefully. Attempts would be made to smooth edges. Cole understood all of that. He also understood something else now. Truth did not need him to fight for it loudly. It needed him to refuse to clean it. Rook settled at Hannah's side, breathing slow and even, a quiet assurance that the worst part was over. For the first time since emerging from beneath the port, Hannah allowed herself to close her eyes. Cole did not believe in coincidence, especially not after midnight. The message that drew him toward the outer pier arrived through a routine maintenance alert, the kind that blended into the background of port operations so well that no one questioned it. A structural sensor flagged irregular vibration near the far edge of the dock. Nothing urgent, nothing dramatic. Exactly the kind of thing designed to pull someone careful into a quiet place. He left Hannah resting in a sheltered area with limited movement, the kind of spot chosen not for comfort, but for invisibility. She was pale now, exhaustion finally taking what it was owed, but her breathing was steady. Cole gave her a brief nod before moving off. She returned it without words. They both understood the language of restraint. Rook walked at Cole's left side, harness darkened by rain, head level, ears adjusting constantly. The dog had not relaxed since the report was sent. His attention carried a sharper edge now, as if the world itself had grown thinner. Rain slicked the metal surfaces ahead, turning familiar paths into mirrors that hid depth and seam alike. The pier stretched out into darkness, its lights spaced too far apart to offer comfort. Water slapped rhythmically against the supports below, a sound steady enough to become hypnotic if you let it. Cole slowed as he approached the flagged section, boots careful on the wet grating. He did not see anyone. He did not hear anything beyond rain and water. Rook stopped. Not behind him, not beside him, directly in front, blocking Cole's next step. Cole felt the tension instantly. He shifted his weight back a fraction, eyes scanning downward. The metal plating at the pier's edge looked intact at a glance, but the rain pooled differently there, gathering in a shallow, uneven pattern that did not match the rest of the surface. Cole bent slightly, reaching out with his boot to test pressure. Rook reacted before contact was made. The dog lunged backward and to the side in one violent, decisive motion, jaws clamping onto the edge of Cole's tactical jacket. The force was enough to yank Cole off balance. He stumbled back hard, shoulders hitting the slick metal as his boots scraped for purchase. The pier collapsed. The section of metal plating where Cole had been about to step folded downward with a shriek of tearing steel. Bolts snapped, supports gave way. The surface dropped cleanly into the black water below, vanishing in a spray of foam and debris. Cold air rushed up to replace it, followed by the sound of water swallowing metal. Cole lay on his back, breath knocked from his lungs, rain stinging his face. Rook stood over him, stance wide, muscles rigid, eyes locked on the churning gap where the pier had been. The dog did not bark. He did not move. He held position as if the edge might reach for them again. Cole rolled onto his side and pushed himself up, heart hammering now that the moment had passed. He crawled back several feet before rising, keeping his weight low. He stared at the empty space, the jagged edges of torn metal framing nothing but dark water. Half a second. That was all it would have taken. He knelt and placed a hand against Rook's shoulder, feeling the tremor still running through the dog's body. "Good," he said quietly. It was not praise, it was acknowledgement. Rook flicked his ears, but did not look at him. His attention remained fixed on the gap. Cole forced his breathing to slow and studied the damage. This was not corrosion. This was not neglect. The bolts had been weakened deliberately, the support scored just enough that the added weight of a man would finish the job. Anyone stepping there would have gone straight into the water, dragged under by gear and current. No gunfire, no witnesses. No body recovered quickly enough to ask questions. They had not needed to kill him directly. They had needed him to disappear. Cole stood slowly and moved along the edge, keeping distance from the compromised section. Rook tracked every step, body angled protectively. Cole reached the control box mounted nearby and opened it. The casing was clean. Too clean. Wires inside had been adjusted, not damaged. Someone had reset the sensor after weakening the structure, leaving just enough data to justify inspection without triggering alarms. A trap designed for someone disciplined enough to respond. Cole closed the box and stepped back. Rain continued to fall, erasing footprints almost as soon as they formed. Whoever had set this had already counted on that. He looked down at the water again, imagining the weight of gear pulling him under, the cold, stealing breath before panic could even form. Rook finally broke his stare and turned to Cole, eyes searching his face. Cole nodded once. "I know," he said. They moved away from the edge together, slow and deliberate. Cole's thoughts did not race. They narrowed. This was escalation, not retaliation. A warning wrapped in precision. The message was clear. Stay inside the lines we've drawn, or the environment will finish what we don't start. Back near the safer section of the pier, Cole paused and took out his device. He logged the collapse without commentary, attaching time, location, and photographs. He marked the failure pattern. He did not speculate. Facts would speak later. Rook sat beside him, posture steady again, the tremor gone. He had done exactly what he had been trained to do, and something more. He had made a choice. Cole looked at the dog with a new weight of understanding. Rook had not reacted to a command or a signal. He had read the moment and acted with complete certainty. That certainty had rewritten the night. "They don't need guns," Cole said quietly, more to himself than to Rook. "Just water and time." Rook's ears lifted slightly at the sound of his voice, then settled again. Cole stood and turned back toward the port, toward Hannah, toward the report already moving through channels designed to resist erasure. The trap had failed, but it had revealed itself. That mattered. It meant whoever was behind this was confident enough to act openly, trusting systems and silence to finish the work. They had underestimated one thing. Cole rested a hand briefly against Rook's neck and felt the solid calm there. "Half a second," he said. "That's all it takes." Rook rose and walked with him, steady and silent, leaving the broken edge of the pier behind. The collapse was enough. Cole did not push. He submitted. He watched the system do what it was designed to do once it could no longer pretend nothing was wrong. The quiet report gained traction as corroboration stacked fast and clean. Procurement logs conflicted. Sensor data refused to align. Maintenance approvals overlapped where they should not. The structure spoke in numbers, and numbers were harder to silence than people. The arrest came before dawn. Richard Halverson was taken from a logistics office with no windows and too many binders. He was in his mid-50s, compact, silver-haired, dressed like a man who believed neatness passed for integrity. His voice stayed level. His hands did not shake. He asked about jurisdiction and stopped talking. He had lived inside process long enough to know when it turned against him. When they walked him out, he glanced once at the files on the table, not at the officers. He knew what had failed him. The port project froze within hours. Access revoked. Orders suspended. Contractors stalled mid-routine. The docks kept working, but the invisible paths went dark. What had moved quietly could no longer move at all. Hannah Pierce was cleared the same day. The notice was short, factual, no apology. Her records reappeared as if they had never been gone. Wrongful confinement was acknowledged once and never repeated. It was enough. She did not argue. She had never wanted noise. Recovery was efficient. A coastal clinic. White walls, salt in the air. Hannah spent most hours upright in a chair, blankets around her shoulders, conserving energy. She spoke little. When she did, it was precise. Her face was still pale, her frame thinner, but her eyes were steady again. She watched everything. Cole visited when he could. He sat. He waited. He left. He did not explain himself. Rook lay between them, head down, eyes open, 7 years old now. The dark coat still thick, gray just beginning to dust his muzzle. He tracked the room the way he tracked terrain. Door, window, floor, calm. On the second visit, Hannah spoke first. "They suspended the project," she said. "Yes," Cole replied. "They didn't say why." "They don't need to." She nodded. That satisfied her. The third day, she said, "They asked if I wanted to testify." "And," Cole said, "I offered documentation." He almost smiled. Almost. Physical therapy started early. Short walks, controlled breathing, no drama. The therapist was Claire Morgan, early 40s, tall, lean, posture precise, a former endurance runner whose career had ended with one bad fall. She understood limits without resenting them. She did not ask Hannah to tell the story. She asked where it hurt and adjusted accordingly. Cole watched once from the hall, then stopped. Trust meant stepping back. Rook adapted instantly. He lay quiet during exercises, rose when Hannah stood, sat when she rested. The staff stopped trying to distract him. They understood what he was. On the fourth evening, rain tapped lightly against the window. Hannah watched it for a long time. "They tried to erase me," she said. "Yes," Cole answered. "They thought I'd disappear quietly." "They miscalculated." She looked at Rook. He didn't. Silence returned, not empty, shared. By the end of the week, the logistics division was under review. Halverson talked, not loudly, not generously. Enough was all it took. The pier failure was logged as deliberate compromise. The phrase environmental hazard appeared in the summary and was immediately challenged by the data attached beneath it. Structure beat language again. A Port Authority representative arrived on the 5th day. Sarah Bennett, mid-30s, tall, lean, hair pulled tight, posture practiced. The kind of woman who learned early how to survive meetings without blinking. She spoke plainly. She thanked Hannah for her professionalism. She left a folder on the table and did not insist it be opened. After she left, Hannah closed the folder and slid it aside. "They want closure," she said. "They want stability," Cole replied. "Stability comes after truth," Hannah said. Cole nodded. No argument. Discharge came quietly. Cole walked Hannah to the door. She moved slowly, but without assistance now. Rook stood close, steady. Hannah rested her hand on his head for a moment. Longer than necessary. "Thank you," she said. Rook accepted it without ceremony. Outside, the air was clean. The port lay distant and subdued. Cole watched Hannah get into the waiting car. She did not look back. Neither did he. The work was done. The system had spoken. Someone had listened. Cole turned away. Rook matched his pace. The night felt lighter, not because danger was gone, but because it had failed. 1 year later, the dock no longer creaked. Steel sat where steel should. Bolts held. The surface carried weight without argument. The port had not been polished into something new. It had been corrected. That was better. Cole waited near the edge of the rebuilt pier, hands in his coat pockets, shoulders loose. The alertness that once lived permanently in his posture had softened, not gone, just quieter. He had learned when to stand down. Hannah walked toward him along the dock, steps steady, unhurried. She looked stronger now, color returned, spine straight without effort. Her hair was tied back loosely, not tight with control. She wore a simple coat and practical boots, the kind chosen by someone who trusted the ground beneath her. She had gone back to work months earlier, reviewing infrastructure projects no one wanted too many questions about. She asked them anyway. Rook followed a few paces behind. He was slower now. The gray at his muzzle had spread, and his steps carried care instead of speed. But his eyes were unchanged, calm, certain. He paused once, sniffed the air, then continued, as if satisfied nothing here meant harm. Hannah reached Cole and stopped. "This is where it happened," she said. "This is where it failed," Cole replied. She nodded. That mattered. They stood side by side, looking out at the water. It moved the way it always had, indifferent and honest. Behind them, a few people lingered at a respectful distance, pretending not to watch. Mark Ellison leaned against a railing, broad-shouldered, hands scarred from years of work. He had overseen the rebuild, spoken little, corrected much. Nearby stood Claire Morgan, tall, relaxed, arms folded loosely. She watched Hannah with the quiet satisfaction of someone who had seen a body return to itself. Rook eased down at Hannah's feet, careful and slow, then settled with a long exhale. He rested his chin on his paws, eyes open, present. Cole turned toward Hannah. He did not stall. He reached into his coat and brought out a small box. No speech, no setup. "I don't want a life built on surviving," he said. "I want one built on choosing." Hannah looked at the ring, plain, solid, unassuming. She smiled, quick and real. "Good," she said. "Drama makes me suspicious." Cole knelt, steady, the dock firm beneath him. The wind lifted Hannah's hair and let it fall. She laughed once, surprised by how light it sounded. "Yes," she said. "Absolutely yes." Applause rose behind them, brief and restrained. Mark nodded and turned away. Claire wiped her eyes and didn't bother hiding it. Rook lifted his head and gave a single low sound, then settled again, satisfied. They married 2 weeks later on the same dock. No arches, no uniforms, no speeches about heroism, just people who mattered and words chosen carefully. Hannah wore a simple dress that moved easily. Cole wore a dark suit that fit without stiffness. Rook lay beside them on a padded mat, a blanket over his back, eyes open. When the vows were spoken, he shifted closer and leaned lightly against Hannah's ankle. They promised trust as a daily act. They promised to stop when something didn't belong. They promised nothing loud. Afterward, they walked the length of the dock hand in hand. Children ran past them. The water reflected the sky without distortion. Nothing hidden, nothing owed. As the light faded, they sat at the edge, feet dangling above the water. Rook lay between them, breathing slow. Hannah rested her head briefly on Cole's shoulder. "This place tried to erase us," she said. "It didn't," Cole replied. She smiled. "It gave us ground." Rook pressed closer, tired in the good way. The port hummed with ordinary life. The truth, once buried, had learned to stay visible. They stood and walked away together. No need to look back. The ground held. Miracles are not always loud. They do not always arrive with thunder or signs in the sky. Sometimes they come as a pause, a warning instinct, a faithful presence that refuses to move on. In this story, the ground did not save them. Faith did. Faith expressed through loyalty, through patience, through the courage to tell the truth, even when silence would have been safer. God often works through ordinary obedience, through people who choose integrity when no one is watching, through love that grows not from victory, but from survival and trust. In our daily lives, we may never face collapsing docks or hidden crimes, but we face choices every day: to speak the truth, to stand when something feels wrong, to stay when walking away would be easier. If you are watching this and you feel buried by fear, exhaustion, or loneliness, remember this: God still sees you. The ground beneath you can still become solid again, and help may come in forms you never expected. If this story gave you hope, please share it with someone who needs light today. Leave a comment and tell us where you are watching from. And if you believe that God still works quietly in our lives, type Amen in the comments. Subscribe to the channel for more stories about faith, courage, and quiet miracles. May God bless you and your family. May He protect your steps, strengthen your heart, and guide you safely through whatever season you are in. Amen.